The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory, 1878, as Levi Jackson reloaded his Winchester rifle with steady hands that had seen too much death. The sun hung low in the western sky, painting the landscape in hues of amber and gold as he mounted his dappled gray stallion, Storm, and headed back toward his ranch after a long day of clearing coyotes from his property. The loneliness of the frontier weighed on his shoulders like the dust-covered duster he wore. 30 years of life etched into the lines around his eyes. Levi had built his ranch from nothing after returning from the war with enough saved pay to purchase a decent plot of land. Over the years, he transformed Whispering Pines into one of the most prosperous cattle operations in the territory. But prosperity hadn't filled the emptiness in his home or his heart. The gentle rhythm of Storm's hooves against the hard, packed earth was interrupted by a sound that didn't belong a woman's desperate sob. Levi reined in his horse, his hand instinctively moving to the Colt revolver at his hip. In these parts, caution kept a man alive. Hello. He called out, his voice carrying across the open range. The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. Then came a rustle from behind a cluster of sagebrush, and a woman emerged, her dress tattered and dirty, her face smudged with trail dust and tears. In her arms, she clutched a small bundle wrapped in a faded blue blanket. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse with thirst, "please don't hurt us." Levi immediately holstered his weapon and dismounted, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I mean you no harm, madam." The woman was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with honey-colored hair that might have been beautiful if it weren't matted with dust. Her eyes, a striking shade of green, were sunken with exhaustion and ringed with dark circles. "My name is Levi Jackson," he said gently. "My ranch is about 2 miles from here. Are you lost?" The bundle in her arms moved, and a tiny whimper emerged. Only then did Levi realize it was an infant. "My baby hasn't eaten in days," she said, her voice breaking. I don't have any milk left." Levi felt his heart constrict. "Then you're both coming home with me," he said without hesitation, the words tumbling out before he could consider their implications. Relief flooded the woman's face, but suspicion quickly replaced it. "Why would you help us? You don't know me. Out here, madam, we help those in need." "It's how we survive," he gestured to Storm. "My horse can carry us both back to the ranch. There's food there, clean water, and a safe place to rest." Hesitantly, the woman nodded. "My name is Hannah Montgomery," she said, clutching her baby closer. "And this is my daughter, Clara." Levi helped Hannah onto Storm's back, then mounted behind her, careful to keep a respectful distance while still providing support so she wouldn't fall. "Hold on tight, Mrs. Montgomery." "Miss," she corrected quietly. "Just miss." The implications of that single word weren't lost on Levi. An unmarried mother in these parts faced scorn and rejection at every turn. "Miss Montgomery," he acknowledged with a nod, clicking his tongue to urge Storm forward. "Let's get you and little Clara home." The journey to Whispering Pines took less than 30 minutes, but Hannah struggled to stay conscious, her body swaying dangerously several times. The ranch came into view just as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, a large 2-story home built of sturdy timber, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and in the distance, cattle grazed peacefully in fenced pastures. As they approached, a middle-aged woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on an apron. "Mrs. Bellamy," Levi called out, "we have guests in need of immediate attention." Martha Bellamy, who had kept house for Levi since his return from the war, took one look at Hannah and the baby and immediately sprang into action. "Bring them inside, Mr. Jackson," she ordered, already turning to prepare the house. "I'll heat some broth and prepare a room." Within the hour, Hannah sat in Levi's kitchen, a warm blanket around her shoulders and a bowl of hearty beef broth in her hands. Clara, cleaned and wrapped in a fresh blanket, slept peacefully in a makeshift cradle, a drawer lined with soft linens. Mrs. Bellamy managed to get some goat's milk into her, Levi explained, sitting across from Hannah. "We keep a nanny goat for fresh milk." It seemed to agree with Clara well enough. "Thank you," Hannah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know how to repay such kindness." "No need for repayment," Levi said, his voice gruff with emotion he wasn't accustomed to showing. "Just tell me, if you don't mind, how you came to be out there alone." Hannah's fingers tightened around the bowl. "My parents died of influenza last winter in Illinois. I had nowhere to go, but I received a letter from a childhood friend who had moved to Wyoming Territory. She wrote of opportunity here, a chance to start fresh." She swallowed hard. "I was already with child when they passed. The father was the son of my father's business partner. He promised marriage, but when I told him about the baby, he denied everything." Levi's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "I sold what I could and purchased passage west. My friend was supposed to meet me in Cheyenne, but she wasn't there when I arrived. I waited 3 days, spending precious money on a hotel room, before learning she had moved on to Oregon Territory months ago. And the baby, Clara, was born in a boarding house in Laramie. The proprietress was kind enough to let me stay until my money ran out. That was 2 weeks ago." Hannah's voice trembled. "I've been walking since, hoping to reach the next town. I had no idea how vast this territory truly is." The gravity of what this young woman had endured settled over Levi like a heavy blanket. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need," he said firmly. "The ranch is isolated, but we're self-sufficient. There's plenty of food, clean water, and no one will bother you here." "I can work," Hannah said quickly. "I'm stronger than I look, and once I've recovered my strength, there will be time for that discussion later, Mrs. Bellamy interrupted, entering with a steaming cup of tea. "Right now you need rest. I've prepared the guest room for you and the little one." Later that night, after Hannah and Clara had been settled, Levi sat on his porch, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The stars shimmered overhead in a vast tapestry of light, but his thoughts were firmly on the woman sleeping under his roof. "She's just a girl, Mr. Jackson," Mrs. Bellamy said, joining him with her own cup of tea. "Barely more than 20, I'd wager." 22, Levi confirmed. "She told me while you were preparing the room, and you're 30. "What's your point, Mrs. Bellamy?" The housekeeper sipped her tea calmly. "Simply that she's vulnerable and you're a kind man. Be careful that kindness isn't misinterpreted by her or by yourself." Levi frowned. "I offered shelter to a woman and child in need, nothing more." "Of course," Mrs. Bellamy replied, rising to return indoors. "Just remember that hearts are fragile things, Mr. Jackson, especially those that have been recently broken." Days turned into weeks at Whispering Pines Ranch. Hannah's strength returned gradually, the hollowness in her cheeks filling out as she ate regular meals. Clara, too, thrived under the care of 3 adults, growing plumper by the day and beginning to smile and coo. Hannah insisted on earning her keep, helping Mrs. Bellamy with household chores once she was strong enough. She proved to be a skilled cook and had a way with the vegetable garden that impressed even the housekeeper, who had maintained it for years. Levi found himself looking forward to returning to the house each evening, where the sounds of feminine voices and occasionally Clara's giggles filled rooms that had known only silence for too long. He tried to maintain a respectful distance, as Mrs. Bellamy had advised, but it became increasingly difficult when Hannah sought him out in the evenings, eager to learn about the ranch's operations. "Have you always been a rancher?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset while Mrs. Bellamy rocked Clara inside. "No," Levi replied, leaning back in his chair. "I grew up in Pennsylvania. My father was a blacksmith. I enlisted when the war broke out." "The war between the states," Hannah murmured. "You fought for the Union." Levi nodded, his expression growing distant. 4 years. "Saw things no man should see." He cleared his throat. "Afterward, I couldn't go home, too many ghosts, so I headed west with what pay I'd saved, and built all this," Hannah said, gesturing to the thriving ranch around them. "It's remarkable, Levi." The use of his first name startled him pleasantly. Until now, she had insisted on calling him Mr. Jackson, despite his repeated invitations to address him more informally. "It's just hard work and good fortune," he said modestly. "The land is fertile, the water clean. I've been luckier than most." "I don't believe luck had much to do with it," Hannah replied, her green eyes studying him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "I've watched you with your men, with the animals. You care for everything under your protection. That's rare." Uncomfortable with her praise, Levi changed the subject. "What about you? What were your dreams before?" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely. "Before Clara," Hannah smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "I wanted to be a teacher. I love books, learning. My father encouraged it, though many thought it improper for a girl to be so educated." "You're still young," Levi pointed out. "That dream needn't die." Hannah's smile faded. "An unmarried mother has few options, Mr. Jack Levi. Teaching requires an unblemished reputation." "The world is changing," he argued. "Out here, people are judged more by what they do than by past mistakes." "Is that what you think Clara is, a mistake?" Hannah's voice had grown tight. "No," Levi said firmly, meeting her gaze. "Never. I only meant that your circumstances shouldn't define your future." The tension in her shoulders eased. "I apologize for jumping to conclusions. It's just most people would view my situation differently." "I'm not most people," Levi replied simply. As June turned to July, the days grew hotter, and the work on the ranch increased. Cattle needed moving to fresh pastures, and preparations for the autumn roundup began. Despite the demanding schedule, Levi found himself spending more time at the house, often lingering over breakfast or returning early from the range. Mrs. Bellamy noticed, of course. "You've taken quite an interest in our house guests, Mr. Jackson," she observed one morning as Levi watched Hannah in the garden from the kitchen window. Clara balanced on her hip as she picked vegetables. "They've brought life back to this place," he answered honestly. "I hadn't realized how quiet it was before, indeed." The housekeeper placed a cup of coffee before him. "Miss Montgomery has been asking about employment opportunities in town." Levi's head snapped up. "What? Why?" "She feels she's imposed long enough." Mrs. Bellamy studied him carefully. "She's a proud woman, Mr. Jackson. She won't accept charity indefinitely." "It's not charity," Levi protested. "She works harder than hired help would." "Perhaps you should tell her that," Mrs. Bellamy suggested mildly, "before she makes arrangements elsewhere." That evening, Levi found Hannah on the porch after Clara had been put to bed. The moon hung full and bright over the ranch, casting silver light across the landscape. "Mrs. Bellamy mentioned you're thinking of seeking work in town," he said without preamble. Hannah startled slightly at his direct approach. "Yes," she admitted, "you've been more than generous, but we can't stay forever." "Why not?" The question escaped before he could consider its implications. Hannah blinked. "Pardon." Levi leaned against the porch railing, gathering his thoughts. "The ranch is prosperous, but it lacks proper management of the household. Mrs. Bellamy is getting older, and she's mentioned retiring to live with her sister in Denver come winter." "I see," Hannah said carefully. "Are you offering me employment as your housekeeper?" "I'm offering you a home," Levi clarified, "for you and Clara. You've proven yourself invaluable these past weeks, not just with household matters, but with the ledgers you helped organize, the garden you've expanded." He hesitated. "The ranch runs better with you here." Hannah's cheeks colored in the moonlight. "That's very kind, but there would be talk. An unmarried woman living in the home of a bachelor, even with Mrs. Bellamy present." "I hadn't finished my proposal," Levi interrupted, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm not offering you a position as my employee, Hannah." Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Levi, I know it's sudden," he said quickly, "and I'm not asking for an immediate answer, but I want you to know that the option exists. I care for you, Hannah, and for Clara. These weeks have shown me what my life was missing." Hannah rose from her chair, her expression unreadable. "This isn't something I can answer lightly. Clara and I come as a package, and any man who takes me would be taking on another man's child." Clara would be my daughter in every way that matters, Levi said firmly. I already love her as my own. Tears glistened in Hannah's eyes. You hardly know me. I know enough. Levi took a step toward her. I know you're strong, resourceful, and kind. I know you love your daughter fiercely. I know you laugh at Mrs. Bellamy's terrible jokes and cry when you think no one can hear you. I know your favorite time of day is sunset and that you sing to Clara when you think you're alone. He paused, suddenly self-conscious. I've been paying attention, Hannah. A tear slipped down her cheek. I need time. Take all the time you need, he said gently. I'm not going anywhere. The following days were filled with a curious tension. Hannah remained at the ranch but kept a polite distance from Levi, focusing on Clara and her household duties. Levi respected her need for space, though every evening when he returned from the range, he hoped to find she'd reached a decision. A week after his proposal, disaster struck. One of the ranch hands came galloping into the yard, his horse lathered with sweat. Fire, boss. He shouted as Levi emerged from the barn. Lightning struck in the north pasture. The grass is bone dry, it's spreading fast. Levi immediately sprang into action, calling for every available man to gather buckets, blankets, and shovels. Tell Mrs. Bellamy to prepare bandages and water, he ordered. We'll have burns to treat before this is done. Hannah appeared on the porch, Clara in her arms, her face pale with worry. How bad is it? Bad enough, Levi answered grimly, mounting storm. Stay inside, keep the windows closed. If the wind shifts and brings the fire this way, take the wagon and head to town. Be careful, Hannah called as he turned his horse toward the billowing smoke visible on the horizon. The fire burned hot and fast, devouring the parched grass with terrifying speed. Levi and his men worked tirelessly, digging fire breaks and beating back flames with wet blankets. Hours passed in a blur of heat, smoke, and exhaustion. By nightfall, they had contained the worst of it, though several men suffered burns, and a portion of the north fence line was destroyed. Levi's face and hands were blackened with soot, and a nasty burn ran along his forearm where an ember had landed on his rolled-up sleeve. When he finally returned to the ranch house well past midnight, he was surprised to find Hannah waiting on the porch, a lantern burning beside her. You should be asleep, he said wearily, dismounting with a grunt of pain. How could I sleep, not knowing if you were safe? She rose quickly, coming down the steps to meet him. You're hurt. It's nothing, he dismissed, though the burn throbbed painfully. Hannah took his uninjured arm firmly. Inside, now. Mrs. Bellamy has prepared hot water and bandages. Too exhausted to argue, Levi allowed himself to be led into the kitchen, where Hannah gently cleaned the soot from his face and hands before turning her attention to the burn. Her touch was tender yet efficient as she applied a salve and wrapped his arm in clean bandages. Thank you, he murmured, watching her work by lamplight. Despite the late hour and obvious worry, she was beautiful, her honey hair twisted into a simple braid, her green eyes focused on her task. The fire is contained, she asked, securing the bandage. Yes, we lost some grazing land, but no cattle, thank God. The fence can be rebuilt, and your men, a few burns, nothing serious, they're tough cowboys. Hannah nodded, relief evident in her expression. Clara finally fell asleep an hour ago. She was fussy all evening, as if she sensed something was wrong. She's perceptive, like her mother, Levi said with a tired smile, Hannah's hands stilled on his arm. I've been thinking about your proposal, she said quietly. Levi's heart skipped a beat. And when I saw the smoke today, when I thought you might be in danger, she swallowed hard. I realized how much you've come to mean to me, to us. The thought of losing you was unbearable. Hannah, Levi whispered, scarcely daring to hope. I care for you deeply, Levi, she continued, meeting his gaze. More than I thought possible after everything that happened, but I need to be certain this isn't just gratitude on my part or pity on yours. It's neither, Levi assured her, taking her hand in his. What I feel for you has nothing to do with the circumstances that brought you here and everything to do with the woman you are. Hannah's eyes searched his, looking for any sign of uncertainty. Then yes, she said finally, her voice stronger. Yes, I'll marry you, Levi Jackson. Clara and I would be honored to become your family. Joy surged through Levi, temporarily washing away his exhaustion. He leaned forward, hesitating just a moment before Hannah closed the distance, pressing her lips to his in a gentle kiss that held the promise of 1,000 more. The wedding took place in late August, a simple ceremony at the ranch with Mrs. Bellamy, the ranch hands, and the local pastor in attendance. Hannah wore a dress of pale blue cotton with wildflowers in her hair, and Clara, now 6 months old and thriving, in her arms. The news of their marriage spread quickly through the territory, bringing curiosity and some gossip. But Levi's standing in the community and his obvious devotion to Hannah and Clara soon quieted the worst of the talk. As autumn approached, Hannah suggested converting one of the unused bedrooms into a small schoolroom. We could invite the children from neighboring ranches, she explained excitedly. Most of them receive little formal education. I could teach reading, writing, mathematics. Levi agreed enthusiastically, proud of her determination to pursue her dream in some form. By November, 3 children from nearby homesteads were making the journey to Whispering Pines 3 times a week for lessons, with Hannah beaming with purpose as she guided their learning. Life settled into a rhythm of domestic happiness that Levi had never imagined possible. Evenings were spent by the fire, Hannah often reading aloud while Levi bounced Clara on his knee. The little girl had begun calling him Pa, a development that brought tears to his eyes the first time he heard it. One snowy December evening, as they lay together in the warmth of their bedroom, Hannah turned to Levi with a mysterious smile. "I have a Christmas gift for you," she whispered, "though it won't arrive until summer." Levi looked at her in confusion before understanding dawned. "Are you certain?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Hannah nodded, placing his hand over her still flat stomach. "Doctor Miller confirmed it yesterday when he was here to check on Mrs. Peterson's boy. We're having a baby, Levi." "A baby," he repeated in wonder, pulling her close. "Our baby. Clara will have a little brother or sister," Hannah said, nestling against his chest. "A proper family." "We already are a proper family," Levi corrected gently. "This is just another blessing to be grateful for." As the snow fell softly outside their window, Levi reflected on the remarkable chain of events that had brought them together. A chance encounter on the range, a desperate plea from a starving mother, and a simple offer of shelter that had changed everything. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" he asked quietly. "What might have happened if I'd taken a different route home?" Hannah shivered slightly at the thought. "I try not to. We were at the end of our strength, if you hadn't found us when you did." "Providence," Levi murmured, kissing the top of her head. "That's what Mrs. Bellamy calls it." "I think she's right," Hannah agreed, "though I believe we also make our own fate through the choices we make." "You chose kindness that day, Levi. You chose to help a stranger with no expectation of reward." "And received the greatest reward imaginable," he finished, his hand still resting protectively over their unborn child. 5 years later, Whispering Pines Ranch had grown into one of the most prosperous properties in the territory. The main house had been expanded to accommodate not only their growing family Clara, now a precocious 6-year-old, and William, their 4-year-old son, but also the thriving school Hannah had established in a purpose-built building adjacent to the main house. With 12 students now attending regularly, ranging in age from 5 to 16, Hannah had fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher while still being present for her children and helping Levi manage the ranch's accounts. Mrs. Bellamy had indeed retired to Denver, though she visited each summer, delighting in spoiling the children she considered her grandchildren. One warm September afternoon, as Hannah dismissed her students for the day, she found Levi waiting outside, holding the reins of Storm's successor, a gentle mare named Star. "I thought we might take a ride," he suggested, his eyes twinkling with the same warmth that had first drawn her to him. "What about the children?" Hannah asked, though she was already untying her teaching apron. Clara is helping Mrs. Wilson with dinner, and William is having his reading lesson with Jacob, Levi replied, referring to their most trusted ranch hand who had taken a particular interest in their son's education. Hannah accepted his help mounting the horse, and together they rode across the familiar landscape, now lush with successful crops and dotted with healthy cattle. When they reached a particular patch of sagebrush, Levi reined in his horse. "Do you recognize this place?" he asked quietly. Hannah looked around, realization dawning slowly. "This is where we met," she whispered. "Right here." Levi nodded, dismounting and helping her down from her horse. "6 years ago today, a desperate young woman with a hungry baby changed my life forever." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes as she remembered that day, the fear, the hunger, the hopelessness she had felt. "I was so afraid you'd turn us away." "Never," Levi said firmly, taking her hands in his. "From the moment I saw you, something told me you belonged at Whispering Pines, with me." Hannah leaned into his embrace, overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built together. "When Clara and I came home with you that day, I never imagined all this was possible. A loving husband, another child, my school. You've given this ranch its heart," Levi said, kissing her tenderly. "You and the children are everything to me." They stood together in the golden afternoon light, the sagebrush stirring in the gentle breeze, two souls who had found each other against all odds on the vast frontier. What had begun as an act of kindness, a cowboy offering shelter to a desperate mother, and her hungry baby, had blossomed into a love that would sustain them through all the seasons of their lives together at Whispering Pines.